Hi everyone, welcome to Off the Podium. I have a special guest from San Francisco. Eugene Izotov is with me. He's a principal oboist of the San Francisco Symphony, also the professor of oboe at the San Francisco Conservatory. Welcome to Off the Podium.
Thank you.
So a little bit about, I would like to know a little bit about your journey from Russia to the United States and how that happened.
So my journey, I'm not sure how much time you have for this program, a complete journey. So I'm originally from Moscow. In this country, I have to clarify that I'm from Moscow, Russia, not the one in Texas. Like many musicians who went to my school, especially the wind players or string players who basically were looking at a career in orchestra. I was looking to do that for the rest of my career there. Then when I was about 17, then a lot of political things happened there. In fact, the coup d'etat happened. And actually, when I say I'm from Russia, that's not really true because I'm from a country that no longer exists. I'm from the Soviet Union. So anyway, I wanted to continue my career in the United States because I was especially impressed by the wind playing in this side of the world, Western Europe, and particularly oboe playing in the New World in the United States. And this is a really long story short. I sent my mother, who was already working here at Princeton University, a recording of me winning the Russian old Russian wind players competition, and somebody just happened to be there recording it. And I mean, to fully appreciate how unique that was in the year 2020, when everybody has a computer in their pocket. But in those days, things like this didn't happen. So this really was an angel that just like happened to have a tape recorder and recorded my performance and gave me the tape. That was unbelievable at the time. I never knew who this was. He said, like, hey, here's the tape of your performance. So this is the tape that I sent to my mother, who was already here. And I said, find me a teacher. And she sent it to somebody she knew. She's a molecular biologist, so she knows nothing about the music world. And one way or another, this tape eventually arrived to Ralph Gomberg, who was principal oboist of the Boston Symphony, one of the most illustrious figures in American, not just oboe playing, wind playing. Curtis, the Gomberg family, out of 7 kids, 6 of them actually went to Curtis and got major jobs in American top orchestras. So anyway, so he called my mother, and then Soviet Union immediately on receipt of this tape and said, okay, this kid has to come study with me, but he has to do it now because he's looking at a major change of embouchure, aesthetic, reads, and everything. So he brought me to America to study with him in Boston University in 1991. And that's how I came here. And since then, if I can just briefly sum up what happened in the next, between when I was 17 and now, from graduating from Boston University, I briefly was in New World Symphony with actually music director Michael Tilson Thomas, who's now my director here. And then I went to play principal in Kansas City Symphony. Then I came to play associate principal in San Francisco. And then I went on to play principal in the Metropolitan Opera, then principal in Chicago, and finally as principal with San Francisco Symphony.
So a little bit about going from Chicago to San Francisco. Why the change? Why the move?
A lot of people have asked me that. So I guess there's not one answer to this question. But you know, when you're starting out your career, the concept of what's better is very clear. Like, this is better, so I want this for me, for my career. And then you go for it, and if you're very lucky to have it, like I was very fortunate to win all these auditions, you would get higher, and you would redefine what is better. And I've tried what's better in various places, and then I ended up in Chicago, which is, of course, a destination orchestra. And after 10 years in Chicago, and I say this with a lot of respect for all my colleagues there and all the positive memories that I have there. there comes a time in a person's life when it's not a question of what's better, but a question of what's better for you.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I can't go into the detailed description of all the pros and cons of playing with Chicago Symphony as opposed to playing with some other orchestra. I know these orchestras from inside out, so these people are my friends, or at least my colleagues. So there's no perfect situation, I can tell you that for sure, having experienced several high-profile orchestras. So I'll just say that, after 10 years of Chicago, because a lot of people have asked me, so you just moved to California because of better food and nicer weather, and those things are nice. I won't lie to you, that's very nice. I don't miss Chicago winters, although I'm from Moscow, so I've survived 17 winters in Moscow. That's not so, I mean, in Moscow we think Chicago winters are cute, but I am, as a person, as an artist, for me, to create something is a lot more exciting than to recreate something. And I find that with all the comparisons that I go back and forth, should I stay in Chicago, should I go to San Francisco, ultimately that's really the decision that I made, because I like to look forward. I'm very excited about what can be done, what can be created. And after 10 years in Chicago, I've experienced something that I could not have experienced anywhere else. I'm very grateful for that. I'm very grateful for the growth, for a special way of playing that they have, certainly when people like Muti or Barenboim or Haiti are conducting. Those were especially memorable. But another thing is, respectfully, these are the people that will, unfortunately, not be conducting, and some of them are already not conducting in Chicago or anywhere else. So I had to look at the orchestra as a family, as an ensemble, as my team to go forward, and where would I go? And I just felt that San Francisco was the right decision for me, and that's the direction.
That's great. Actually, I get to these I call them fan questions, people who know that I'm going to have you on and ask some questions later, but I'm gonna ask it now because it kind of relates. One of the people asked, have you ever considered applying or auditioning for European orchestras and specifically Russian orchestras, since you have the Russian background?
Considered, yes, because when important opportunities come up, you have to consider them. And also, I'm very close with Valery Gergiev. I've known him. We've worked together in a number of orchestras, including the Met, when he was at one point principal guest. That's when I was there. And in Chicago and in Japan, he's he's also actually currently music director of Pacific Music Festival in Sapporo, where we had wonderful concerts, and we recently saw each other in Moscow and St. Petersburg because Valery invited me to serve on the panel for the first ever Tchaikovsky competition that included winds.
Wow.
So we're no longer, chopped liver next to strings and piano and voice. So I have such tremendous respect for the musical heritage of Russia, and that's certainly a part of who I am. And that's my original training, and that's hugely a part of who I am, and that's always with me. And when opportunities, particularly there, like we talked about, all the marvelous things that he's doing in Mariinsky Theater and all the opportunities that would be there. You see, again, at this point in my life, it's no longer just about me. Because I'm married, I have a family, I have two wonderful boys. And so the question is, what's better for me? What's interesting for me? If in the perfect world, I have so much hunger to pursue it, whatever is interesting to me, and then I would maybe go ahead and do it. But in the reality of the situation, at some point I had to decide that that's the path for me. And in your question, to your question particularly about European orchestras, so two things. First of all, in the old world, I don't know refer to the Roman times. I refer to not so long ago, like maybe even 10 years ago. There was this great division of the European oboe versus the American oboe. And it was so prolific and so divisive, and it was such a subject of so much conversation, and sometimes not so nice, really, because people would get so categorical about this. And it would virtually, until very recently, it would be impossible for a player like me, who was basically American trained, certain American style of playing. I'm speaking about sound quality, tone production, would be virtually impossible to get a job, let's say, on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean, or in Asia for that matter. But I'm very happy that that's changing. That's changing both ways. Because, first of all, and it's so trivial to say, very trivial, but it's also very true. Music is actually universal. Music is one of those things that actually unites us. That's something that we all understand. This is something that we all, doesn't matter what style you are, what background you have. At one point, we all had this experience that music, young age, entered our lives, and we said, you know what? I can't live without it. I have to be part of it. Like, we all share this in one form or another. So I'm very happy to see that instead of playing camps, and not just Europe versus America, America versus South America versus Asia, within America, are you Cleveland style? Are you Curtis style? So all of that is changing for the better, because people are a lot more open-minded, because people are willing to, instead of making these rigid borders, they're willing to open their ears and listen to some of the wonderful things that somebody else might do. For example, it would be an unthinkable thing for a violinist to say, oh, well, I don't like his playing, that's German violin sound. I don't like German violin sound. Oh, really? Well, I don't like, French violin sound. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, there's certain traditions, there's certain aspects of playing that come from places. But really, we all serve music. We all play such a great 700 years of music has been written. It's still going on. It's still being written. So this division is I'm very happy to see that this is coming to an end. And perhaps my students that I'm teaching here, maybe they will consider other opportunities. And certainly, I was the first oboe player, Russian-born oboe player, who had a major career in this country. But certainly not last. In fact, since my arrival, there's been others. And first oboist of the Concerto, actually both first oboist of the Concerto Orchestra, and now the second oboe. It's like turning into Russian mafia. All three are Russian over there. And many examples, like Philippe Tendre. He's the new incoming principal oboist of the Philadelphia Orchestra. His friend, she's a wonderful player. And Ramon Ortega won Los Angeles. He didn't stay. And so forth. So this is starting to change, and I think this is very, very good for all of us. That no, it's not a question of foregoing traditions. It's a question of learning from these traditions and taking them further.
Yeah. So again, based on that, again, another fan question, and I'm tying this into my questions because I think some of them were actually really nice. You've been to Russia a couple of times for the competition, and also your relationship with Valery Gergiev and other orchestras there. How has the Russian wind playing changed? Because the person asking the question is saying that in the Soviet times, it was not very good, according to that person. And now, has it gotten better over the past couple of decades? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's no question that it's better. It's better over there. It's better over here. It's better in general, because that's sort of the way of the world. We're musicians. We want something better. Fundamentally, what's changed is that they are no longer behind the Iron Curtain. That's a major change. Also, what that means is they have access to technology. They have access to traveling. They can, by they, I mean particularly musicians from the former Soviet Union, since you asked. They have, in the cases of the big orchestras over there, like Mariinsky Theater, like Bolshoi, they have the opportunity to actually own good instruments, because in our pedestrian world of wind playing, our instruments don't cost thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or millions of dollars, but they have to be good. And also the awareness of what's happening, quote unquote, abroad, what's happening in Western Europe, what's happening in Paris, in Vienna, in Berlin, in New York, in Chicago, and other places. So they're much more aware of it, because the one thing that was always there is talent. It's a talent. It's a country that's so completely just full of talent, and combined with this opportunity to hear and to see more, combined with that talent, it's been a really powerful combination. I've been really amazed to hear not just my friends who also have big jobs in Europe, but to hear their students, and to hear the students of their students in some cases, to hear what they sound like. And I talked about this a little bit earlier. It's no longer a question of sounding, quote unquote, oh, he sounds Russian. Because my teacher Ralph Gomberg always used to say that our number one job as musicians, is to serve the composer. In other words, we have to give the composer what they want. So to do whatever it is that, I'll rephrase, if you're only able to do one thing, if you're only able to have one particular sound, one particular way of playing, well, if it's beautiful, it might just serve some aspects of some music sometimes. But ultimately it's limiting, because we have to be able to do a great number of things in order to express what we want within the music that was written, that was given to us by the composers. And that's why what they're able to do instrumentally combines beautifully with what they want to do artistically. And I think that's a major change, because I agree with your friend that said that it was somewhat lacking instrumentally, because Russian violin playing, Russian string playing in general, Russian piano playing come to great traditions. I mean, many traditions. Rubinstein, they founded in Shkola Stalaskova. They have amazing examples of what it's like to have a beautiful sound, beautiful facility, beautiful technique, beautiful artistry. So it was not so much the case, perhaps, with other instruments. But again, I'm not speaking about artistry. I'm speaking about just instrumental ability. But that's all been changed for the better. I mean, I was extremely impressed by their level of playing.
A concerto that you would like to revisit, whether you've played it 5 or 10 times, or something that you just played once, something that you can't wait to go back to and play again.
So, I'm a son of a violist. My dad is a violist. He played in Russia State Orchestra under Evgeny Svetlanov. So, as a son of a violist, I'm allowed some viola jokes. So, one of my favorite viola jokes is, I know all viola concertos. And you pause. And you add both of them. So it's not quite like that in the world of the oboe. I mean, Baroque music alone, we're talking 200, 300 concertos. But really, Bach, double, Mozart, Strauss, Von Williams. These are the monoliths of greatness. If I forgot one, I'm sorry. I hope that the composer will forgive me. To be honest with you, I love the Strauss the most. And since you asked me this question today, this is my answer to today. And to add, I am somewhat of a conservative person, in the sense that I don't as forward-thinking as much of as I strive to find something new, something interesting. I don't like new for the sake of new. And especially in the oboe, the problem with oboe writing is that many composers write something not just technically impossible or nearly impossible, something so challenging that it take just days, weeks, months to just get through it. But it doesn't use the best qualities of the instrument. What are the best qualities of the oboe? It's a highly subjective thing. I think our best qualities are that, what we do best? We bring sadness best. That's why in every great opera composer knew this. Whenever, even Hollywood composers knew this. If you hear, the couple is having conversation, then he's about to go somewhere, and then you hear the oboe. Uh-oh, that's not good news. That means that love story is just not going to work out. And if you hear English horn, one of them is going to die. I mean, that's for sure. That's the bringer of death. So we bring this kind of beautiful sadness, like in Aida, like in Rosenkavalier, like in Otello, like in 100,000 others. So we have this beautiful voice, the beautiful ability to, in a really simple, melancholy, exotic, and yet really easy to understand kind of way, move someone with just several notes. So the ability to sing, the ability to really write and carry a line. And we can compete with instruments like flute or clarinet, especially for fingers. And after a while, fingers are just fingers. I mean, it's really impressive to hear. In fact, in Tchaikovsky, not to go too far, the winners, the top, because we were in one category, which was in one hand unfortunate, because we had to choose apples and oranges, oboe against flute, against clarinet, against bassoon. But this really was very just easy to see who is the best storyteller, who tells which of these musicians is the best storyteller. And that was actually wonderfully refreshing to see that what we do is really all about music. It's about musical, artistic, human contact. And I'm not, I think, so to answer your question, Strauss absolutely does that. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece that was written in 1946 at the end of World War II. Can you imagine in Germany, in Garmisch? I mean, it was complete disaster. And yet it's filled with so much light, so much truthfulness. And that's why that piece is always very special to me. But if somebody happens to write a concerto that gives me an ability to deliver a beautiful line, some technique, but most importantly, move someone. I don't want people to leave, the concert hall thinking, "My God, he's got some fast fingers." I mean, I got Pasculi for that. But somebody who can just leave with something that will stay with them, and if they can be somehow emotionally moved, that's something that I would want. And unfortunately, I have not found a concerto that can compare to Mozart, you can imagine, to Mozart, to Strauss in that department. Williams, maybe several others.
Yeah. You're also a teacher. You teach at the San Francisco Conservatory, and you also teach privately, as you said before. I listened to a previous interview, and you talked about the four walls. So can you talk about that? Can you share that with us?
So this is advice that came about as I work with conservatory level students, and there happens to be this unfortunate realization that they're no longer protected by the kind of endless, being in school, like school, and that's my world, that's the end of my life. And they feel the weight of the real world, not just setting in, but it's on the horizon, it's coming. They need to get a job. So that's when it gets really tricky. And talking about music is, I heard a wonderful expression, talking about music is like dancing about architecture. Right? So there's a lot of really interesting opinions, and some of my colleagues or people who also play the oboe in that order, they can be, somebody will attend a master class by them, and you say, "So how was it?" And, "Oh, amazing." "Why?" "Oh, so funny. I mean, such a personality, such humor," and so forth. And that's very nice. But what have you learned? In what way is your playing better having attended this masterclass, this lesson? So that's when it gets tricky. So the four walls is not absolutely everything that you need to know, like buy a book, Four Walls by Eugene Izotov, guaranteed your money back, you'll have a successful career, I'll be out of it. So no. But basically, whether you're an oboist, or especially if you're not an oboist, because this is particularly designed for future orchestral players, like most oboe players who want to pursue orchestral career, and I would imagine the same for other instruments. So in a committee, to win, you need the votes of the people who do not play your instrument. There's just math, because there's more. If you're auditioning for any orchestra, there's going to be a maximum of 2, maybe 3 oboists judging you. Everybody else are not going to be an oboist, thank God. Otherwise, it's going to be an international double reed convention. And that's a different story. And they will listen to you through the prism of their own instruments, but more importantly, they will listen to you as musicians, because musicians don't understand instrumental things. Musicians understand musical things. So the 4 walls are intonation, rhythm, dynamic range, and accuracy. And I talked about this at length. It's well everywhere, but it's something that I wish I could do also to this. Is this what you saw it?
Excuse me? Sorry, it froze there for a second.
Is this where you saw the interview?
San Francisco Conservatory, yes.
The Conservatory, okay. Yeah, because I talk about this all the time. So the advice, it means no matter how beautiful your sound is, no matter how interesting your personality is, no matter how fast you can play, articulation, vibrato, and so many other things that are absolutely indispensable, necessary, and important, they are subjective, and particularly sound. That's probably the most subjective of them all, because, I love this sound. Really? I like her sound, and go figure with that. It's a completely subjective thing. But these 4 things are not subjective. And anybody with any kind of ears will understand that you either play in tune or not. You either have good rhythm or not. You either play with dynamics or not. And accuracy is the least important, maybe of the 3. But it's important because you have to play what's written. And these 4 walls, I've made another analogy. These are kind of like the 4 wheels in a car. The moment one of the wheels is not there, you can't drive the car. It doesn't matter then, the rest is a Ferrari. You can't drive the car. So that's why we're very eager to sort of look past certain aspects of it. I think most people understand that intonation is important, but then they get a little bit, time, I'll take a little bit of time there, take a little bit of time here. And dynamic range is where most students certainly really struggle with, because what's in our head and what comes out of our instrument are 2 very different things.
Yeah.
And being able to sort of predict that is very hard. So that's why intonation, rhythm, dynamic range, and accuracy, these are not everything, but you absolutely cannot live without them. And that's why I pay so much attention to them.
Yeah. A couple of specific oboe questions, and if you have some historical context, that would be great, specifically to the first question, which is, why does the oboe give the A?
Yes. Well, because it's the most important thing in the world. I don't answer that. So I have actually wondered that myself, as you can imagine, and I found several explanations. And I think the truth is somewhere between the fact that the oboe is a fixed pitch instrument, and put into context of the fact that the oboe and the French horn were the first arrivals to the symphony, the orchestra in general, that were not strings. And on all of these instruments, strings certainly, and French horn, if you imagine, it was not French horn, it was just hornet. However, how many times they rolled it, I don't know how many feet it was. It's really amazing what they do. So it's not something that instead of putting it negatively, I will say that the oboe is the one that you put the reed in, and that's the fixed pitch that you get. Also, I heard the explanation because it has a penetrant tone. It certainly is a part of the oboe. Although, speaking about all the changes that we've made discussing and improving tone. I mean, I just did an interview with New World Symphony with Michael Tilson Thomas and two students from New World discussing Firebird by Stravinsky, because I just did a complete performance of Firebird. Michael, who's a former oboist, by the way, did you know that?
No, I didn't.
It's a dark past. He did confess at the beginning of the interview that the four of us actually have something in common. What's that? The word double reed player. So that was nice to know. So there's a lot of beautiful writing for bassoon and for Firebird, and Michael wanted me to imitate what the period, not period like from Baroque, but from 100 years ago, 1913 or something like this, when it's performed the first time. What the oboe must have sounded like in the ears of Stravinsky, because that's, we sound, generally speaking, better, but also different enough. So there's something to be said for that. So it's a very centered, it used to be a very centered, nasal, penetrant, stable tone. So those two reasons are probably why the oboe gives the A, although as the rest of the oboe community would like to believe, it's just because of the supremacy that the oboists have over other instruments. It's not true. It's just historical. That's just how it happened. We're just lucky.
And the next question is, you've been a principal of various major orchestras around the country, and also you have friends that play in many orchestras around the world. 440, do most orchestras play at 440, or do some use another tuning pitch? Can you maybe say a couple of orchestras that tune at a different frequency?
Yeah, of course. My teacher used to say, Ralph Gomberg used to say, that the key to sanity is flexibility, because it's very easy to go completely crazy in oboes, dealing with reeds and knives and stuff that most people have no idea about, and it's probably better that way. But the pitch, of course, the starting tuning pitch is very different. It varies from 444, 445, maybe in Vienna higher, to 440, like in Cleveland, like in Philadelphia, to something that is maybe closer, a little bit more international, like 442, like really like York Philharmonic, like Chicago used to be when I got there. In fact, the reason, there's a lot to be said about this, but the reason the variation in pitch is that it, of course, primarily affects the strings, because the strings is the most important part of the orchestra. I will go on record after saying this, that the strings is the most important part of the orchestra, of course. And higher sounds more brilliant, more bright. Lower sounds a little bit darker. So it's just a question of what kind of a sound the orchestra has, what kind of a sound the orchestra wants to do. And when I was in Chicago, which I was the last musician in the orchestra that Daniel Barenboim hired, so they played firmly at 442, and then I would maybe go out a little bit. And that's okay, because pitch is a living thing. We're not tuners. We're not a bunch of chord tuners. We're people. So I kind of figured that it would be around 442 and a half, something like this, average. But then when we chose as our next music director would be Riccardo Muti, I was very concerned, because I know that Muti has an extraordinary relationship with Vienna Philharmonic. In fact, I think that he's conducted that orchestra more than any other conductor ever, except for Carlos Gladbach.
Wow.
For over 40 years or something. So, and I was very concerned, because what kind of a sound, what kind of a pitch would Muti have in mind? But when Muti came to us, and I had a meeting with him, I said, Maestro, it was very easy to connect with him because I speak Italian. So that eliminated some initial problems, of unfamiliarity. But he said, look, I come from the upper world. He comes from the idea of voices. And voices don't like to be too high. And also because he was music director of Philadelphia Orchestra, that they're firmly at 440. He actually made the pitch of the Chicago Symphony. He lowered it to 440, which was actually a pretty big switch. Not for me so much, but for some of the other pitch instruments and for some brass instruments. Some of them had to buy new equipment, some of them had to hire new therapists. I don't know, but for me, it was. I prefer for the kind of sound that I would like, the kind of sound aesthetic that I want, and without going through too much trouble instrumentally getting there, I prefer anywhere from 440 to 442. It's absolutely fine. Anywhere higher, I just played with York Philharmonic in November. They started 442 and they pretty much stayed there, and that's still fine. But anywhere higher than that, I would have to make some adjustments. Not impossible, just difficult.
A couple of inspirational artists that have kind of guided you through your career. It could be teachers, it could be people that you've never even met, but they've inspired you. Who comes to mind?
Are we talking people who are alive or in general?
In general, anyone that comes to mind first, I would say.
Well, I'm very, very fortunate because since my early childhood, I've been around people who saw my potential and they did absolutely everything to help me, and equally important, to make me really believe in myself. So I'm for sure very grateful, number one, to my father. Actually, I should say, and my mother, but my father's a musician. So he did not want me to be a musician, actually, originally, because he thought it was too hard. But then I started showing the symptoms, and I was about 6 years old. I was like, okay, to be a musician, fine. Just for crying out loud, don't play something hard like a string instrument. So I chose the oboe. So how hard can it be? So my dad, and of course, I have to mention Ralph Gomberg, my teacher, my mentor. I named my older son Ralph, and I miss him every day. And also, there's I can name some others, but I just want to say a word about Ralph Gomberg because he was a great musician, great orchestra partner, great citizen of music. But what I love most about him, and all of us Gomberg students that we still talk about it, we lovingly remember him, is not just the playing or the music making. He just loved life, and he never forgot how important life was, aside from all of this stuff that sometimes you have a good read, sometimes you have a bad read, sometimes you have a conductor you hate, sometimes you have a soloist that you love, it's a Tuesday night, it's a Friday night. You still make music, and he never, every day, he was so completely happy by being a part of this profession. That was amazing. He just exuded this amount of happiness, and everything else that he loved in life outside of it. His golf, his wine. He taught me to appreciate wine. I could never understand why. And there's a video on YouTube I made when I was a kid, like 16, 17 years old. Just started studying with him. I used to follow him with his camcorder. He used to talk to me like just cooking in the kitchen, like the joy of food. And his life seemed so complete. He had a wonderful wife and 4 children and grandchildren, and may I be this lucky to have a life like this. It was really, really inspiring.
Life-changing moment. You could say a musical thing or a non-musical thing, something that changed your life.
Life-changing moment. Just honestly, the first thing that comes to mind is when my first son was born.
That's beautiful. I love hearing that. Now, to end it, I don't want to take too much of your time, but to end this, I want your thoughts on COVID-19. And I don't like talking about current events because things seem to change, but this is truly a historic moment in the world. What positives do you feel might come out of this for musicians, because a lot of musicians are struggling around the world, especially those who freelance? What positives might come out after this, and what's really going to negatively impact if you think there might be some negative impacts as well?
Well, the negative, as you said, is very obvious. Unfortunately, this has impacted not just the music industry, but everyone in a possible way. And some people are really struggling. And my heart goes out to so many who rely on the freelance world. My heart goes out to them anyway, because it's a very, very tough profession to not know when your paycheck is coming next. But particularly now when live performances are suspended, that's really rough. And of course, I'm very fortunate that I'm associated with a big orchestra, but we all have major hurdles to overcome, major problems, because we don't know when, number one, when this will end. It's not going to be a hard deadline because people are concerned, and the proximity to other people, and we're the beautiful thing about what we do is that we need the audience to recreate, to make them a part of the performance. We're the performing arts, not recreate, to create with them a part of the performance. And otherwise we play from empty hall. And that's very tough because we don't know when this will end. And financial ramifications, some orchestras are really struggling with it. And we hope in San Francisco Symphony to do okay, but we're completely mindful of the really challenging role that everyone in our family, administration, board, musicians, everybody has to find a way forward, and we will hopefully support each other in this regard. To answer the other question about what positive things, well, just sort of, this is the irony of human nature. Is, for example, I will give you easy to remember, because another moment in my life, of course, that affected me so profoundly was 9/11. And I try to be the ambassador of music. Sounds a little bit too grand, nothing so fancy. I just like to talk to people, talk on behalf of music to people about it. And most of the talking I don't do from the podium somewhere. I just do this in the supermarket and airplane. And what do you do? You're a musician, and people are immediately interested in this. Then they're immediately surprised that I'm not starving. But once they get over that, they're interested about it. So people have a natural curiosity. And when 9/11 happened, we felt, we the musicians, I personally felt, so many others felt that we have a real power to offer something very needed to people, something that would help them heal or escape whatever it is that they're going through, if for just a few moments or an hour of the performance, 2 hours of performance, escape something and have something much more beautiful and connect with something. And I think the power of what we can do is really, really important now. I mean, we're making online recordings. Everybody's doing online recordings because people want music. People want this in their lives. People want to be moved. They want to be sad or be happy. They want to be entertained. And they want something that will offer this kind of beautiful escape from the ongoing concerns of their lives. And I think that music now, just like during 9/11, aftermath of that, when people really said, I need to heal myself. I need to find some kind of shelter. And this is what we can do. And that's why I'm just one musician. I happen to play piano a little bit, so I've been making some recordings in oboe and piano. I've been putting more effort to create more of these recordings and putting them on social media just to have time. That's another. Otherwise, maybe we not have so much time to do it. But I'm happy to do it. It's extremely time-consuming. But I'm happy to spend the 6 or 7, 8 hours a day it takes to put the video together, to edit this, and to upload it to social media, because I can see the comments that people are making. I mean, they're not commenting on tone and legato, this and that. I mean, it would be nice, but that's really not what's important. In fact, I love what Michael Tilson Thomas, my music director at San Francisco Symphony, he says that there's two things important in a music performance, in a performance. One is what do you feel during, and two, what stays with you afterwards. And I think we're so heartbroken that we can't make music in real life for real audiences. We can't wait to come back to our lives. But we still have this power, because we still have the power to make a recording, to play something for someone. It doesn't matter if it's shot on a high-definition camera or on your iPhone. And you can have the power to share it with the world and, move someone with that. And then that person will remember it for a brief moment, maybe, or maybe not, maybe longer. But we still have this power, and I think this power is now more important than ever.
Last question. Many people know different things about you, all the orchestras you've played, all the recordings you've made, and solos that you've played, your family. Something that your fans or just people that follow your career don't know about you that you're willing to share with us.
Well, okay, here's something that all my friends know, of course. Nobody knows. So the curtain comes down. I really like Star Trek.
Wow.
I'm a Trekkie. There you go.
Wow.
Outside of the open.
Well, is there anything that we missed that you want to talk about? I feel like this could go on, but I think it's a good time to end, and maybe we'll down the road at some point do another one together.
Look, I'm very happy to speak with you. I like your questions, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity to answer them. We all are in the same business, because we have the ability to bring something interesting to people, to entertain them, to maybe, in your case, educate them, in my case, maybe to just move them somehow. So I'm very happy that we're doing this. I'll be very happy to speak with you another time.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day.
My pleasure. Thank you.